Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Oscar Joffrey. I'm one of the co-founders and president CEO of CoreChain. What an exciting month it is, December 2022. And here we are. We're going to go right down to the basics because, well, I'm not going to spoil the surprise. We're going to be talking about the chaos of what we're reading about. But I think, whenever anything like this is happening, sometimes we need to go back to the very basics to have a better understanding of what it is that we're talking about. And today, I am so grateful that we have two individuals that I believe are going to open your mind and, more importantly, get you to understand what is blockchain. So, first of all, let's start with our special guest. Richard, please take a moment to say hello and introduce yourselves.
Hey, good morning. My name is Richard Ring. I am a former intelligence officer from JSOC and a former Air Force intelligence analyst. And for the last 5 years, I've owned a private intelligence firm, and we're one of the only, if not the only, private investigation firms that's able to conduct both the on-chain and off-chain portions of a crypto-centric investigation, whether that's for white-collar crime, fraud, or conducting corporate intelligence.
Wow. Okay. I stayed up too late last night watching Jack Ryan. So this is really, I'm excited about this. All right. Dr. Garimella, please.
Hi, I'm Kiran Garamala. I'm the Chief Scientist and CTO for CoreConnex, and I've been in this financial services space for more than 30 years, IT and consulting, and also a trader myself in various types of instruments, including futures and all really fun and exotic stuff. And of course, I have a PhD in data analytics and machine learning, and we've done lots of really interesting stuff with blockchain over the past 3 to 4 years. So looking forward to having a really interesting discussion.
I agree. I think it's going to be really exciting. The discussion, I think, is timely. So I'll put it out there. What is so timely? Well, we're all watching the news, the big chaos in the market with FTX. And 99% of the market is still trying to figure out what is all this. And we're going to start at the origin. So, let's talk about where it all began. I mean, Corinne, obviously from an academic point of view and from the sector of research and all that. Tell us the origins of blockchain, where we are today. And obviously I want to slip into Richard because Richard and I had a separate discussion once and he just blurted out for me where it came from. But please.
Most people are actually very surprised when I tell them that Bitcoin is not the origin of blockchain. And surprisingly enough, people say, hey, what is blockchain and where it came from? And I tell them a blockchain is nothing more than a chain of blocks. It's as simple as that. Okay. I know, but underneath that, there's a lot of history behind it. But a chain is really a linked list. So people in the computer science, from way back when, and I'm kind of dating myself now, back in the mid 80s, we actually learned how to create chained lists, program them. But linked list itself began way back in the 50s, in the mid 50s, 55, 56. Distributed systems, we have distributed computers, and that is what the origin of DLT really is, was in the 50s and 60s, right? And people are fond of quoting Merkle tree, something really exotic, as if it's invented, in 2009. But Merkle trees have been around since 1979, and consensus mechanisms, Byzantine fault tolerance, all of these have been, available since 82 and on. And zero knowledge proofs, really something really exotic in the blockchain world today. But that was invented way back in 1985. So the origins have been very it's been quite a number of years and decades in the making, right? A cryptography, consensus mechanisms, and chaining, distributed systems. All these things have been around for decades.
I know, and it's rather, but I'm glad you brought up the point. I didn't want to bring up the issue of Bitcoin, but you did, and I think it's great. And there's so much dialogue out there about blockchain, what it is and what it isn't. And Richard, you may recall the first time you and I had a really great chat. It was, uh, for ex person, ex government, you really have a great way of communicating. And one of the things that you said to me, Oscar, at the end of the day, they're all DLT. Let's slip in right into that. Tell me, because that got to me, and I agreed with you. It's just that there's been so much discussion thinking they're both different. Please share that with us.
Yeah, so distributive ledgers going even farther back in history actually go back to at least Roman times. The Romans used distributed ledgers to basically throw gasoline on the economy, world, the first globalization economy that we can really track throughout history. And they use these distributed ledgers to allow people to make purchases from one city to the other so that people weren't having to haul around big bags of gold with them, making them prone to robbery, right? Of course, it wasn't perfect. Security is an issue, people injecting bad information, but that's one of the first roots of distributed ledger technology, if you will, the stone tablets and the parchment paper. And then going even further, you have the Byzantine general problem set, which certain DAGs like Hedera have claimed to have solved with their asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance. And that was a hypothetical scenario in which you have multiple generals surrounding a city, and they all need to be able to accurately communicate: are we attacking or are we retreating? Because if they don't all attack, then they'll be defeated. And you have to account for bad actors injecting bad information. So that's kind of what distributed ledger technology aims to solve, is allow people to operate in a trustless society where I don't know you, you don't know me, but we can still move forward with a financial transaction or a piece of property that's been tokenized, et cetera. So DLT is the overarching umbrella term. And then within that, you have DLTs such as blockchain. You have different types of DAGs like Holochain and Hedera as well, and new ones emerging every day. People are working on solving the problems. The big problems with DLT have always traditionally been the trilemma, right? Which is security, scalability, and decentralization. Historically, you have to give up one to get the other two. So that triangle, as you start solving for one or two of those problems, the other side of the triangle will start suffering. And so I think that's what we're seeing now with these modern DLTs, is they're trying to basically have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to solve all three problems, and some projects are actually succeeding in that.
Yeah, and they are. And obviously, I don't want to muddy the waters today. I mean, it's because of the chaos that's current happening. We're seeing something that we didn't anticipate. We're saying bye to many of our colleagues who been working hard at their ventures, and unfortunately, because of this, all that research is somewhat is going to be deteriorated. But I do see the upside. But you brought up an interesting point, and Karen, I'm going to go to you on this because the premise has been, when we've been talking about this for a number of years, is that it's like one shoe fits everyone, right? This is the shoe, this is the only shoe, and boom. So give us an overview why that cannot happen in the complex world we have today, which is, we have financial world, capital markets world, real world, e-commerce. Everybody thinks they're one, but tell us the differences.
Richard made a great point about DLT being the overarching umbrella term that we really should be using. And what's happened is that with the way blockchain evolved, people didn't know what a blockchain was. They thought Bitcoin and Bitcoin is blockchain. Then slowly, now they're finding out that blockchain isn't just Bitcoin. It's an underlying technology, but it isn't just blockchain. There's DLT, which is an even overarching set of technology. So I think about DLTs as it's like the word transportation, right? How many ways can you have transportation? You can walk, you can have a horse, you can bike, motorbike, car, plane, ship, spaceship, and so on. And but everything won't suit everything, right? I mean, you can't run a ship on a dry land, and you can't take your car into the water, right? I mean, so it depends on the specific use case, and all these different DLTs, such as the blockchains, the hash graphs, the DAGs, the holochain, and other stuff like that. There are different ways of propagating those transactions to the distributed community, different ways of forming consensus, different ways of storing that information in different ways, right? So you'll have to very carefully look at what is it you're trying to solve, what is the underlying premise and what is the real problem. I mean, if you take blockchain as a classic example, my first introduction to blockchain was when I was a interning as an auditor for accounting audits. And in the old days, way back before computers, we had to deal with physical ledgers, physical ledgers, all right, accounting ledgers, and each ledger had a set of pages, and inside the page you had the transactions, and at the end of the thing you have to total everything up and then sum up the debits and the credits and get your supervisor to sign off on that one and then carry forward that balance to the next one and continue on down the path. It is very, very difficult to eliminate transactions from that physical ledger, right? You cannot tear out a page. The page numbers wouldn't match, the numbers, the totals wouldn't match, and so on. And that really is the fundamental concept of a blockchain. And when we went into computers, we kind of lost some of that because now people can willy-nilly change things in the database, underneath. Now we're kind of bringing back all of the efficiencies of computer technology through the blockchain, but all of the security mechanisms we had on the physical ledger, except that we are now distributing that in real time with multiple copies. So it's extremely difficult to fool and corrupt that one, right? So, but that's only the blockchain part of the DLT. But there are many other types of DLTs, and as I said, it really depends on the type of use case we're looking at.
I know the use case. I really horn in on this because it over the last 10 years, watching this sector evolve in the maturity that we are today. I know I'm using that word at the same time while we're facing one of the greatest chaos, but in the reality, we need to look at it this way. The maturity is allowing us to look into this. And if we are going to go to the next wave of utilizing this type of technology infrastructure that could transform various different elements of the way the world operates. Um, I think the clear message from my point of view in all this is that I think people need to approach it from the perspective of understanding the case scenario. If there are elements where there's an interconnection where with another, let's say another DLT, another blockchain to be interconnected, rather than thinking that one is going to fit it all. And that's I think that's the biggest mistake we've gone to today. I believe it's I bring it to something even more basic. I know I'm going to age myself for everyone here, but I go back to 1999, the early 90s, when the big fight was the database. It was DB2, Oracle, and MySQL. There was a reason we had choices. We had three or four or maybe more, and then more have arisen. Now we got Mongo. So why are there different flavors? Because there are different applications that require a different way of storing data, and I think and that's my personal view. I look at it as here is the thing that we want to solve. Here is how it operates, and then we look at all the choices and we go, this is the one that can best fit this scenario. And there are elements in here that they what is the common theme between them. It happens to be Richard. Okay, so Richard is the common theme between. So does that mean because Richard is the common theme? That's what I feel like they all make that quest that, oh, because Richard is the commonality to all of this is the only thing that they need to go through. And so let me ask you both, Richard. I'll ask you. I mean, you've seen it from why do you think we've gone to this point? Because the reason we're here. Just so you know, the reason we're here at this stage of chaos is because I believe people have made that premise in their business models. They've gone in and said this will fit everything. Why is it that they feel that it needs to do that in order to be the perfect solution for the market using DLT or blockchain technology?
So I think it's just human nature to try to make everything fit into the same circles, get that peg to fit in the circle. That's human nature, but people need to step back and remember there's a reason why we have iPhones and we have Androids, right? We have Apple computers and then we have PCs. And it's because people have different applications. If you're an artist, if you're a digital artist, you're probably going to buy an Apple computer, right? Because they have better tool sets for that sort of thing. If you're somebody that likes to personalize your own stuff, you're probably going to build a PC. So I think crypto is no different. DLT is no different. You you have to ask yourself: is this a fintech uh, sector tool? Am I trying to solve a fintech problem, or am I trying to uh, do fractionalized real estate? Like what's your transactions per second that's needed? How much security is needed? Does this crypto exist to allow somebody to do something like send medical records within the network? So there's different use cases and different projects hone in and try to solve those problems. So it's very, very hard. I can't think of much in history where one thing solved all problems perfectly. So crypto is no different. DLT is no different.
You know what? That's a great way to say it. Historically, we haven't, and you're right. We're not. We can't just take the leap from here to here and say let's squash away all the, because that's exactly it. We would be saying only Microsoft, no more Apple computers, or no more, only Android, not Apple. And you know how people are. No, no, no. We need choices, and
And
thank you
and you
for
want
bringing
those
it to that
choices.
level.
You want those choices because those choices are what keeps everybody on their toes and gives you the best product. So that competition is key as well. You don't want a one size fits all solution because you'll pretty quickly find yourself becoming latent and sitting around doing nothing and not keeping up with the times. So
And there's specifically one really baffling aspect of that one that I found. And there are people who think that the public blockchain is the only blockchain that can happen, right? And I'm
I
going,
know.
how can that
Oh,
be? That is like saying, my car is the only way to have a transportation. But that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's not just a public chains, and it's a permission chains, and there are business enterprises and business ecosystems that need different ways to communicate and do business process, right? And so I find that totally baffling. I mean, it's like, you know, there are different types of chains, guys. Live with it.
yeah, look at all
yeah.
the varieties of vehicles like Karen just mentioned. You're
Thank you.
if you're a handyman, a construction worker, you work on a farm, you need a truck, not a Rolls Royce, right? If you want
Exactly.
luxury, then you go buy a Lamborghini. If you're into speed and luxury, if you want something that's just going to get you from work for the next 20 years to work and back, you buy a Toyota, right? Like that's
Correct.
I can't imagine a world where there's only Fords. That'd be crazy.
And okay, so as you both of you say that, and I echo your words 100%. I'm all in with that. I've been like that for a long, long time. So tell me why. I know we're going to get a little bit of, that's the thing about me when I horn into something, because you said something really interesting. Cars is a perfect example of you have a different vehicle for a different purpose whatsoever, right? Working vehicle, this and that, and we're okay with that. We understand it, the logic, it comes here. But you and we've all seen that the minute you say anything outside of this environment, all of a sudden you're not part of the mainstream. I've had some partners of ours that they've been fantastic going online and trying to educate the market why for this, and they go, oh, but that's not a public chain, it's never going to go this far, and not really understanding that it had nothing to do with the chain. So let me ask you this: what, besides the human element, obviously this chaos is allowing us to do a reset. That's why we're having this webinar today. Let's talk just about blockchain. What is it that we need to make sure that in the next wave we go through, so we don't have these kind of scenarios happen again, because we can't afford it. Let's just face it. We can only do one every 10 years, but even at that, I think people are getting tired of draining their bank accounts in this. But what would you say is the one fundamental flaw that we are all tapping into when it comes to riding the wave? Because that's the way I look at it. Is there was a few people like myself, Karan, John, Richard, a few, including probably yourself, Richard, until I met that here, look at this business case and this and that. But it was all about rah, rah, it's got to be this. What can we do going forward to eliminate that happening again?
I I think the community is missing people that are educating even those already in the community on the true utility uses of this technology. So just my anecdotal observation of the DLT crypto community is that even people that have been in it for the last 3 or 4 years, they're buying tokens, they're investing. Uh, Probably 99% of them still only see it as fintech, is currency. They think NFT is JPEG art. They don't understand that an NFT is to help tokenize a physical asset. For instance, they couldn't define what an oracle is. They think a smart contract is just a contract that has been saved on the ledger, right? So I think the next step is educating people so they can wrap their heads around what this technology is actually going to be used for. And I think that that's when the light bulb will go on that, oh, this is more than just money, right? This is more than just me paying for something in an alternative currency, which is, I think, sadly, I think most people that are in the space, which is a fraction of the population, see it still as just cryptological driven currency is all they see it as. They don't understand the real utility.
I agree with that, but I think this chaos, Richard, is alerting people. If I'm going to lose money next time, I'm going to do my homework. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you start taking supplements. The first time you get on the wave, and you go, whoa, something bad. Okay, the next one, I'm going to read about it. I'm going to find out what it's made out of, make sure. I think we're moving into that phase, and that's the exciting part. Um, so that's why, I thought back when we were launching this, the core chain webinar series, all about blockchain and in particular to the capital markets, because that's what I mean. It's a it's a vertical. Let's call it that. It's a vertical, a segment of the business world that needs its own attention. And if it doesn't get attention the right way, well, we're going to have problems, which we're already seeing. So, but let me ask you both from a personal experience. Get, let's talk some real live examples. Karan, I'll start with you. Let's start it from here's a business case in general. Let's obviously the capital markets and financials, but let's start with that. Where in that scenario, what are the important factors where blockchain plays a key role in its implementation, and why it's so important for people to see how it can change, fundamentally make things increasingly better for everyone by utilizing blockchain DLT technology in here?
Certainly. But before I get into that one, I just want to say one other comment because this is a segue to proper uses within the financial community, right? So back in the days in 2017, 2018, and you and I, we both read hundreds of white papers from the ICO community, right? And I can guarantee, I must have read more than 100 of those. I can guarantee that if you take, 95% of the content in that white paper was all about blockchain, cryptography, consensus, distribution, decentralization, as if the writers had invented all this stuff by themselves, all by themselves, right? The other 3 to 4% was all about invest your money in this one because you're going to make 300 trillion% in the next 2 days, right? And that's sort of call to action. One page, barely 2 or 3 paragraphs, had anything to do with the actual business model of how they're going to make money, how this is going to benefit society. That's it. Um, so your question really is, if you turn this over its head, the technology needs to take the back seat. And we basically need to say, what are the specific use cases? What's the business model behind this one? And so if you now segue from the ICO days, the STO days, and thinking about cryptocurrency, and then you come into financial markets, people have to realize that there's more to financial markets than just cryptocurrency. There are all various types of digital assets, instruments in the financial space, right? You've got equities, securities, you've got debt instruments, you've got collateralized debt, you've got many, many, many types, derivatives, for example, right? All of these serve different needs. All of them require certain compliance. They need some governance. They need risk assessment. And I think that's where we need to start and then determine what really makes it easy to transact and how to make it easier, right? What are some hindrances? What's causing friction in any of those types of financial transactions? And if you start there, people will start to see the light and say, well, that's kind of where we can introduce blockchain. We need immutability, right? Because that introduces trust. We need consensus, so that reduces reconciliation between multiple parties. We need distribution, so people are, they feel secure that somebody else is not going to run away with the ledger to the Bahamas, right? It's all of those. It's underlying mentality and a mindset that really needs to change. There are many specific use cases within the finance industry, right? I mean, securities, for example, are not bearer instruments, but lot of people in the crypto community think that securities and shares and equities can be bearer instruments, which, by the way, are illegal in many countries. So they haven't gotten their head wrapped around how to get away from a payment instrument like a cryptocurrency to a securities instrument, which is an entirely different animal.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for that, because that's one business case right there where there's one particular type of DLT chain that will work to meet the obligations of that. And then, Richard, I know you're working on a personal project, which I hope to provide any assistance, but you're using blockchain for something else, which when you told me what you were doing, I thought, this is amazing. That's exactly the how we transform. If you could share, that would be great.
So before I get into that, I just want to piggyback off what Kieran was
Yes,
saying.
please.
With people that are entering the space to avoid the rug pulls, to avoid the pyramid schemes, uh, do you all know who David Patrick is, the entrepreneur? Okay. So when he talks about investing into anything, there's certain key fundamental principles that you should follow that transcend no matter what sector you're investing in. And one of those first questions you should always ask is there a problem being solved here? Right? Is there a demand for this? And how many other people are trying to solve it? So if you can't answer that with something in the crypto space, it's probably not a good idea. If it's just a Bitcoin clone with a funny meme dog on it and it's not doing anything different than anybody else, you should probably stay away from that, right? The other thing that you should always ask yourself, he says, is who's behind the project? Because he likes to invest in people, not projects. And for the last, let's say, 5 years of the crypto Wild West, you literally have people dumping their life savings in the projects where individuals are hiding behind cartoon faces using, Greek mythology names, and nobody even knows who these people are. They're not even doxxed. Versus maybe somebody that was a Air Force research scientist or somebody like Kieran who has a PhD. I would invest in Kieran. I'm not investing in somebody that calls himself Zeus, and I have no clue who he is. So I just wanted to point that out, that no different than you would with stocks or anything else that you want to get into. You should ask who's behind this project, what makes them qualified. You look at some of these more legitimate projects, and you have people that used to work for Deutsche Bank. You have people that used to work for the SEC. That's something that I can trust because I know these people know what they're doing, right? They know the rules. They know how to navigate the regulations. Even if there aren't regulations, they're pretending like there are regulations and still acting accordingly. That's stuff that you should look into. The cartoon memes and all that, I would say stay away. As far as our use case, what we're looking to do with DLT, so uh, I mentioned we own a private investigation firm, but we also own something called the F3 Foundation, which is a nonprofit. Everybody in my PI firm is former federal law enforcement or former intelligence community. These aren't schlubs in a car with a camera. These are guys that know what they're doing, and they've been doing it for decades. Between everybody in the organization, you probably have 1,000 years of experience. And what we saw was we kind of fell into our lap the epidemic of missing children's cases that go cold if they're not solved in the first couple of weeks, because law enforcement has to move on. Their caseloads are too high, and so we accidentally ended up solving a missing kids case. It fell in our lap, and we went, oh wow, our counterterrorism methods we used overseas actually work here domestically to find missing persons. And so we started solving some more as a proof of concept. And by, kid number 37, we're like, okay, this works. Whether it's a cold case, a dynamic missing kids case that just happened in the last 48 hours, whether it's an endangered runaway, whether it's stranger danger abduction, it didn't matter. We were able to solve it using our methodologies. But us operating as a parallel police force is not a long-term solution. So I always like to think, if I got in a car accident and died tomorrow, would this all go away, or would it continue to outlive me? And so to build something that would continue to outlive us, we had to identify what are the limb factors, the limitation factors for law enforcement being able to keep these cases from going cold, right? Because once they go cold, statistically, they sit on a shelf and nobody looks at them, possibly ever. So the things we identified was that their methodologies were out of date. So that's easy to solve, because now we're working with law enforcement governing bodies in different states to inject our methods, our intelligence community methods, into the police academies for the advanced training for people that are already sworn officers and detectives. So we've already solved that problem. We're working on that with these various police academies across the US. The other limb factor we identified was that they have a serious intelligence sharing problem at the local and state level. So overseas, JSOC's doing its black ops, the CIA is doing its black ops. You have the conventional forces, you have NGOs, you even have law enforcement organizations like DEA operating in Afghanistan. And so you have all these people that all have their individual mission set, yet they're all operating in the same area of operation, AO. We have intelligence sharing tool sets like Palantir, ArcGIS, that overlay on Google Earth, and they have different GeoInt levels, and we're able to share intelligence. Even if people still restrict things, I can see that, hey, something occurred. DEA dropped a DEMPI on this house. So they did some sort of operation 3 years ago at this house that I am looking at as a JSOC officer. And then CIA has something at the house next door. So I can now reach out to people and we can talk, and you can determine how restrictive you want to make it. I can go full open kimono if I want and just let all the intel hang out there for everybody to use. But it's a formalized intelligence sharing tool that takes out the limb factors of the human factor, right? So right now with law enforcement, the way they intelligence share is what we call in the IC the bro network, which is maybe you and I, Oscar, went to the same police academy and we like each other and we meet up for beers all the time. And so we talk all the time and share. But Kieran and I, we also went to the police academy, and I don't like Kieran. So you think I'm calling him to ask him for help, or vice versa? No. So you kind of see where this lends itself to DLT in a trustless society. The bro network is not an efficient way to share intelligence, and it's not formalized. There's no methodology to it. So we wanted to make an intelligence sharing tool, specifically starting focused on missing children, but this could carry over into all other facets of law enforcement. But we want to build it on DLT, and we want to do that because we want to create a database that is trusted by everybody, that's immutable. Nobody could go in there. Nobody can make a claim of corruption, of somebody going in and erasing evidence or getting rid of evidence. The evidence has been entered. Even if somebody later says, hey, that evidence was no good, that was an accident, it's amendable, but you can't delete it, right? Because eventually maybe something actually comes about that turns that around, and actually that was good evidence, but they didn't know it at the time. The other thing is it would allow you to see who the POC is, who entered this intelligence into the network, and make that immutable as well. And then for law enforcement, they have an issue of they have to protect their case, right? So they can't just put all this information out there to anybody. Well, DLT is a great way for us to, through tokenizing law enforcement credentials, ensure that the only people that get on this network are people that are allowed to be on this network. So it lends itself across multifacets of what we want to solve with this intelligence sharing, to take these tool sets that already exist and then build the next version of them on DLT. And I think if you do that, our estimates are you could probably cut about 80% of cases down from going cold.
You
That is
know,
incredible.
no, that is, that's my point. I mean, this is real life, how something so powerful can change something that is so horrific and change people's lives, and yet, I mean, doesn't get the rah that it needs. And kudos for you and your team. I know you're doing it through a not for profit and bringing it out there, but this is a great way to I wanted to give people kind of an example of how blockchain, where it's being used in real life examples, not just in the world. One of the individuals that's here with us, Hunter, posed a really good question. he is right. I mean, shouldn't companies be looking at the state of blockchain to evolve to a more enterprise quality database plus ledger? I mean, does the state? I mean, the way I'm interpreting his question is sort of like, okay, so because blockchain is because of crypto, people shouldn't look at it. Where do you guys sit with that? Should enterprise be coming in and seeing kind of like a hybrid model, or should they find the solution because there is a chain specific to them in order to solve the real problems? Karan?
One of the things, to answer that question, we should not forget one of the fundamental things that Richard highlighted. Everything he said, he began with the core issue and the core problem they're trying to solve, which is extremely commendable. We all, as parents, we really love that. Right? I mean, it pulls at our heartstrings, and that's fantastic. But why would DLT come in and make a difference right there? It's because of the intelligence sharing. It's inefficient, it's unreliable, and maybe there's no trust. So it is to eliminate all of that one. So enterprises, when they look at blockchain as a potential for solving some problem, I think they shouldn't look at blockchain to start with and then try to find what they can solve with it. And I think that's a wrong approach. The right approach is to sit back and say, look, who are our constituents? Who are our participants? What business process do we have? And who are our participants in our ecosystem? We're all kind of loosely, it's a loose conglomerate. And do we all trust each other? Can we trust each other? Can we have business processes without any unreliable trust mechanisms or inefficient trust mechanisms? Can we do it like that? And in many cases where I've consulted with people, and people have approached me, I've looked at their business cases. In many of those, 99% of those cases where there's a large ecosystem of participants and a large business model, the answer is a resounding yes. Do you need a database? Of course you need a database. Do you need email communications? Of course you do. Do you need a way to have business process without wasting time on reconciliation, even if you don't trust other party or don't know who they are? Of course we do. Yes to blockchain. But I think we need to start from there. Otherwise, this is going to be a non-starter.
And
That
if
sorry,
I was
Richard.
trying to sell this to enterprise, to the corporate world, I would point out what DLT does at large. One, we've been foot stomping the fact that it allows you to operate in a trustless society. So I would hope anybody that's smart enough to find themselves in a C-suite position of a Fortune 500 company would automatically have a light bulb go off where they could use that. But the other thing is DLT reduces friction across processes. It cuts out middlemen, it speeds things up, and then it increases accuracy. So I love to use supply chain management is a great use case for DLT for corporations. And the analogy I always like to give is we see on the news when Walmart has a salmonella outbreak and they basically have to throw out all the spinach across all their stores in the southeast because all they can do is narrow it down to a region of where that spinach was shipped to. Using DLT for your supply chain management would allow you to identify the 3 stores that got the bad spinach, therefore saving Walmart who knows how many millions of dollars in both manpower to carry that action out of getting rid of the bad spinach, but also throwing out product that didn't need to be thrown out, right?
Yeah.
So it reduces friction, it increases accuracy, and allows you to operate in a trustless society. I don't know of very many businesses that cannot find a use case for something that solves those problems.
Karan, did you want to add anything to that?
No, absolutely. I mean, every kind of interaction that we have today is a supply chain driven interaction for sure. I remember, years ago, I was having this conversation with a New Zealand company called Fonterra that contributes about 25% of New Zealand's GDP, and they're in the dairy business, right? So from cow to cup, their products, travel almost 40 countries, right? And their biggest problem was no visibility. We don't know where our things are, right? And just imagine all of that had actually been on a permission blockchain with everyone having the latest copy. It's extremely well known. It's immutable. It's encoded, right? That would be absolutely fantastic. I mean, it would have addressed a tremendous amount of problems, to solve many of them for these people. And take dairy products and substitute that with, financial instruments. We go through multiple jurisdictions. There's lots of friction going on. I've dealt with SWIFT and international transactions, and they're very, very inefficient in many ways, right? Sometimes there's no accountability. I had to physically chase one of those wires, international wires, myself from, from United States to Hong Kong, from Hong Kong to Taiwan, Taipei, and I had to do this myself, right? I had to make all the calls, and this happened, a few years ago. So there are a lot of inefficiencies that I think, we can get rid of with these types of technologies. But people have to understand how to make it actually work.
But do you think what's happening right now? I mean, we can't escape the pink elephant in the room. Like, I mean, we all need to. I think we all need to be candid with this. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have that pink elephant, so it's sort of like, oh, let's go for it, let's go for it. Now we have that. Does Hunter have a point that this will have an effect on enterprises or anybody else? Personally, I don't think it will. My personal view right now is of the following. I believe enterprise, the financial, the capital markets, governments, all alike see the value of DLT block. They do see it. I think what we're seeing right now is one segment, one vertical that yes, it's going to be painful, but the bigger players are going to come in and scoop it up at very low dollars, and they're going to operate it compliantly, and we're going to see it to work because there's no escaping digitizing currency. There's none. I mean, this we got to face that reality. We are, you know, it sort of like it's the evolution of where we're moving. So, but in the meantime, do you think that there is a kind of a in the back of their mind, what can we do? What more do they need to know understand about blockchain to get there, or is just there's so much fog around it that they can't even see it. Therefore, they're saying no because the association is crypto, and that's
I
it.
I've seen indications that they're already sold on this technology. They're just waiting for regulations because they have a moral and ethical obligation to their shareholders, right? So they cannot go investing large amounts of capital, shareholder capital, in a technology that has no regulations yet or very little. So I think that's what they're waiting for. One of the indicators that when I'm reading the tea leaves is an article came out, I think less than a week after the FTX crash. JP Morgan Chase said something along the lines of buy the dip. Hey guys, this is a great opportunity. The market's down. But so if they were actually scared of this technology, JP Morgan Chase wouldn't be saying buy the dip after the FTX.
Yeah, I think you nailed. It's correct, and but I do want to. I'm going to just interject there because you mentioned something really interesting. For us, 2023, we see it. It's only going to be about two things: trust and compliance, and because of that chaos. Now, when I say us, I'm talking about the capital markets. People need to really understand the difference between capital and financial. And what does that mean? Well, capital is regulated by the SEC and FINRA. Financial is FTC, other regulators that banking and financial services, which is people tend to think they're the same. They're not. On the capital markets, what people don't realize, the regulations are already there. Yes, the regulations are there. And if you go to the front door to the SEC and FINRA, you knock on it, you show them, and you go through it, and you get your DLT or blockchain technology qualified the way the regulations are intended, you will be operational just like Core Chain is today. Uh, it takes time. It took us almost 3 years to get it, but we did it. We didn't ask for an exemption. So, but I do understand in different elements of business, you need some clarity on regulations and what the impact will be, on how this will play out. But I'm so optimistic about 2023 because I think you said it right there. When the big players are saying the dip, they're going to buy. They're going to get these things at what, pennies on the dollar. I mean,
So so what I've seen is that the Fortune 500 companies are really looking into projects that are ISO 222 compliant. So they're kind of using that as the standard right now with the regulation that we have. So back to if I was telling somebody coming into the space what to look for and what to stay away from, I don't think you can go wrong with something that's ISO 222 compliant.
Correct.
No, absolutely. Many of these situations, right? I kind of go back to first principles. So I'll give you one analogy. I like the transportation analogy because they've been through a lot of these things, and transportation is a very public thing, even though the vehicles are very private in many instances, right? They all have to operate on public infrastructure. So whenever there is a plane crash, you know, people don't say, "Oh my God, the whole aeronautical industry is bad. Let's remove it." That's not the reaction. The reaction really is going to be, what went wrong? What can we do to fix it? Right? It's root causes. They're examining the root causes. Aviation, for example, has a 6.5 sigma capability, right, which is like very, very, very low error, the safest form of transportation, right? But they got there because of a reason. It's because of regulation mandated. The aeronautical industry mandates the maintenance schedules of all the aircraft. They follow a regulated airspace, upside down layered cake, so to speak, right, in the airspace. And, they follow checklists. There's governance, right? When I was learning to fly, there's a whole checklist that I had to go through. I cannot operate from memory. I have to go through a checklist and mark it all off, right? Otherwise, I couldn't, start the engine. So it's a very methodical, it's very, very carefully thought through process. And what many people early in the newcomers to the blockchain and the cryptocurrency space don't understand is that the current financial markets and the capital markets have been operating for more than several hundred years, back from the Medici's in the Italian era, and they went through a lot of these problems about trust, about efficiency, about settlements and risks, and all of these mechanisms are in place for a very, very good reason. Richard, you mentioned that it's all much of this blockchain is about eliminating intermediaries. 100% agree with you. But what many people don't realize, I know you do and we do here, but many people don't realize is that just because you remove intermediaries doesn't mean you've removed the risk that these intermediaries were taking on or mediating, so to speak, right? And that's never going to get swept away. And that's what all these people are now discovering the hard way in the cryptocurrency scams right now. So it all comes down to, hey, do we have the right type of regulation? And we admit, I mean, everyone knows that sometimes regulation can be burdensome and difficult to, it can be bureaucratic in its nature, but the spirit and essence of that is for protection of all the parties concerned. So can we do that much more efficiently? Can we be more methodical and can we have better governance, right? I think those are the lessons that we need to have, right? I mean, I agree with you, Richard. I mean, many business people that I spoke to, the corporates, and they all understand the need for this. They understand the value of this one, but I think they're kind of waiting for a better traction in the regulatory space and even in the risk mitigation space. How do we mitigate the risk in any of these transactions?
Now, a question I'll throw to you two is, do people need to fully understand this technology? Is this for retail? Is it even important for people within the businesses, or is this like the internet where, hey, it's just magic, it works, I sign on, I do my thing, I send my mom money through my bank, I don't know how it works, she just gets the money, right? A lot of people like Mance Harmon says all the time, you're going to use Web 3.0 and not even know it. You're going to wake up, you're going to go to work, you're going to.
You know what's funny about? Yeah, you know what's funny about that question? Today, I think it's a small cadre of retail people who techie nerds who really know everything about wallets and cryptography and how all the things works. None of the corporates know that level of detail, right? And certainly, none of the mom and pop, type of people will ever have a wallet today, for sure, right? I think that needs to turn around on its head. Just like in the large databases and industrial, strength systems today, it's the corporate people and the tech people and the business people in the corporate world that really need to understand how this actually works in excruciating detail. There's no going around it. But when it comes to the retail people, they should be like, hey, it just works. It's magic. We trust it, right?
Yeah,
it
I
cannot
know,
be anything more than that.
but we made it. But I think that is a great question because I often give the analogy to people when they go, can I see the blockchain? I said, so when you go to the bank and you go deposit your bank before to the teller, you go, excuse me, can you tell me, are you using IBM DB2 or Oracle or like, does it really matter? It just shows you the statement. You got $10,000 in the bank. You
Yep.
saw your withdrawals. You see that. I think you nailed it. Your colleague is correct. There, this technology, 99% of people will never see it. It just works. It does what it's supposed to do. What is it supposed to do is we're highlighting the inefficiencies of the way we operate. That's a good thing. We all, I mean, who doesn't know standing in line waiting for your driver's license
Yeah.
or to pay a ticket? I mean, seriously, all these things, we all know inefficiencies. And we can see how, they may not immediately see that, oh, by providing technologies right there. I mean, there was a time that when you went to a restaurant, there was a waiter and writing everything down, and hopefully they wrote down that you didn't want lettuce, you wanted tomato. But now they don't make that mistake because they just tap what you want and the order's automatically, they don't have to walk back there, it's already there. So the technology is doing that. So I think we spend so much time making such a big deal of this for a small community. And this is
Yeah.
an important lesson for everybody to learn, because in the capital markets, people make such a big thing. Hey, Oscar, we want to attract that crypto investor. That's not a crypto investor. That's a technology individual who's fascinated by the technology, who loves what they're doing. They didn't go at it because of this. That's just an afterthought. And unless you understand what you're getting into, this is not your playground. This is a 99% of the audience today shouldn't. Look, the way we operate, there's they use words like wallets and all that. At the end of the day, it's an app. Let's call it. It's an application. So that was a great question, Richard, because we need to, not only do we, as you said, we need to ask ourselves what the problem is. That's number one. That's number one. And is it a front facing problem that can make people's lives easier, like what you guys are doing to find that child, right? But you're fixing it in the front, but it's how that data is being shared and trusted. And every sector has got a front view to it or just a purely back end, making it more efficient, like real estate. My goodness, I am getting so tired of real estate tokenization that it's going to revolutionize the whole industry. And what I find fascinating is that most people do not even understand what they're talking about, because they go, hey, it's going to revolutionize. That's why you should tokenize to raise money. That's not why it's going to do it. And you got to look at the three different parts. There's one big one, and that is when the governments, who they're the ones where the land titles, when they put that on the chain, oh my goodness, that's going to change the way we buy things, we sell them. No more fraud. Okay, game changer all the way. The way we manage that real estate asset on the chain, so it's transparent to the holders and all that. And how we raise capital, well, that's a totally different activity altogether. But to think that all three are one, never, never, never. And can they play together? Okay, that's where we're going to use words like oracles coming in. We're going to do that today. But the industry is so famous for three-letter acronyms, and I think they use that. And I think it was earlier on that you said it, Richard, was everybody thinks an NFT is a JPEG. And it's so sad to see that, but that's the value they put on it, and that's the now. If they lose it, okay, you know what? You didn't dig into it to really understand what it really was. What is the representation? What this was, and the ones that took advantage of it did just that. And I predicted that once again in 2023, a new three-letter word acronym is going to come out. I don't know what they're going to.
I joke with people that the JPEG NFTs are the Zoomers version of Pogs. It was hot for a minute. Everybody got into it, and now nobody could care less. And when I find a Pog from 1990, I throw it in the trash because I really don't care. I think it's also important to point out that DLT, what it's going to do for different industries, it's going to be a spectrum. It's not going to revolutionize every single sector. There are some sectors that it will absolutely revolutionize, and there will some where it's just going to make them work more efficiently and better. So, hey, it's the next evolution in this business. This is where everyone's going. Almost like the little portable credit card readers that small businesses use every day, right? That
Yes.
technology didn't revolutionize every sector, but it made business as a small business owner easier, right? So I think people shouldn't think that DLT is going to revolutionize the world in every aspect. Some industries it will, and some industries it's just going to make them better. And
And
that's
some of them, they're not even going to realize that it's because of it that it's actually making it better. It's like when people complain, we hear this a lot. Oh my God, I got to fill out this form again, but I just gave it to my lawyer. Oh yeah, but I'm the auditor. And then they go to I got to give it to you. Yes. There's nothing more beautiful when you look at information. It's probably like police stations, right? Each one collect the same data in a different way because of their own. This is Karan, this is Richard, this is Oscar, I'm the captain. And then but the people that were actually putting through that aggravation, uh, they're the ones that feel the pain. And I believe in certain sectors, but you are right, it's not going to be for everyone out in the market. But I do believe that blockchain DLT is here to stay. It's not going away. I'm going to ask each of you for last minute words, but someone, Richard, is asking regarding your organization that you're doing that work. If you have a moment, could you share that with everyone as well when you're providing your last minute words, please?
yes. I'll actually put the link in the chat real quick. No case is cool. So our website is nocasescold.org. You can follow us there. LinkedIn is probably where we're the most active, being that most of our clientele are not people off the street. They're business owners and C-suite level individuals. So LinkedIn, and then nocasescold.org. When Kieran's talking, I'll drop our link in there as well. Darn, I had a question for you, which is, what do you think needs to happen to make it easier for the everyday normie on the street to interact with Web 3.0? What things do you see have not been solved yet that need to be solved to allow grandma to operate in this space?
we I think in general with everybody, we all have parents, family members. I think we're just talking above them. And I'll bring this back to the early 1980s. um, in Las Vegas, we have the annual show, the CES electronic show. I don't know if you guys know the history of this show. It was run by engineers. Engineers, and they were so proud of their gadgets building them. And when you went to their booth, they were like zing, skid marks above your head. You're like, what? Right? And then one year somebody came in and all they did was show it. Here's what it does for you. So I think, Richard, that's the point. I think right now we're so busy talking, using Web 3.0, this, and we're using garble jarble words to mom and dad and grandma and grandpa, brothers and sisters, and everybody alike. Just show me, what is it? Oh, I love to do that. That's great. Oh, okay, it's doing that. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that everyone as a whole, whether it's Web 3.0 on blockchain, just do the work that you need to do. And then as an industry, we can squabble whether it's this or that. But I think bringing it to the front lines without language is never going to work. Our industry, our technology itself is evolving too rapidly to do that. Look, I'm 57 years old. I can't believe I said that in recording, but I did. I have colleagues that 15 years ago, they stopped. And people go, what are you talking? They stopped. They stopped evolving and learning. They came to a halt, and that's it. They're not bad individuals. They just chose a. That's it. They said, Oscar, I'm getting off the treadmill. And these are people in the technology sector. It was just too much. Every 3 months, it was changing. So can we do that to the average market? We can't. We need to give them. Here it is, the playground, and we're going to call it whatever it is, and you go in there and experience it. Do they need to know the rest of the garble component? I don't believe so. If that makes a difference in your capital raising, okay, that's a totally different story. But I think we're flooding the market with a lingo that is only going to create further fear and alienate when people just really want to have an experience. That's me. Karan?
Oh, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's like, instead of saying, hey, what makes a good mobile phone, and instead of talking about all the garbo technologies, show them the iPhone. That's what Apple did, right? Here it is. And it was intuitive. It's right away. It's done. And that's what caused the adoption for this one. No one understands the technologies that run Apple. Who knows, right? I don't. And, even, right? But it's just that intuitive experience. It's like Oscar said, show it and let us use it, and that'll make the difference.
Rich,
I agree. I think in the crypto space, it's been the early days of computers where you had to be able to hand jam code in to get
Yep.
things to work. I think now we're entering the phase where, from a lot of the projects I watch, I notice more effort going into the interface to make a
Yes.
usable, easy to use interface the way Microsoft did to computers, right?
Hmm.
When Microsoft Windows came out, that was the opening of the floodgates for the everyday average person to get a computer and be able to use it for something more than just playing solitaire, right? And then I think the last problem that has to be solved is the recovering your seed phrase, basically, right? What happens when grandma
Exactly.
can't find her seed phrase? And
Exactly.
I'm really excited because 48 hours ago, Dr. Lehman Bear came out with his solution to that problem. Now, again, this is the first I'd heard of it, but it was a light bulb moment, his solution. And that was his goal. That he's been secretly working on this for years of how do I allow grandma to have a wallet and not lose her money, right? So I think easy to use interfaces, and password recovery essentially that still maintains the security of the point of DLT.
that's great, guys. I mean, this is a fantastic way. I mean, we got an entire year ahead of us. We're going to have a lot of great discussions. But I think the important thing today, from all of us to all of you, is that this is an exciting technology. We're going to always have two elements of it and everything. It's a lesson for me to learn as well as we go through this journey that we're going to couple our discussions both from for those who are really diving deep into the innovation of what this is possible, but more importantly to talk about the real life cases and how that impacts us on everyday lives. I think, and to say that it's real, as you explained yours, Richard. So thank you to both. Have a fantastic season's greeting to everyone else. Thank you for joining us, our inaugural webinar for Core Chain. Follow us on LinkedIn or on Twitter, Facebook. We love to hear from you. Our speakers as well, we'll send you an email so you can more than reach out to them, share your thoughts and your comments and questions, and anything you can help us enjoy this journey. As Richard said, we need to do a better job in making sure people have a better understanding. Till next time, happy holidays. We'll see you all soon in 2023. Take care.
Bye now.